Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to join us this afternoon. To the folks in the internet, Facebook, welcome as well. And we have our presentation this afternoon on Alaska and the Yukon, and it will be taken shortly by Eric Holland, who's here to present. He's been up there the last few years. While we get started, we'd just like to tell you about some of the reasons that we feel that you'll find it a good decision to book with Fehr-Way Tours. We do have the history that customer is number one. It's not only our motto, but it is something that we've had over the years, and we have people that will attest to that if they've traveled with us before. So you're going with a company that values you as a customer. We have 41 years of experience. 41 years ago, back in 1979 it was, my father-in-law,
Mr. Fehr is going to come to life there. So
yeah.
There it is.
I just realized my father-in-law that you can see in the background of the picture here, John Fehr Sr., started the company. He had been a bus driver, and he always enjoyed taking people places to see things and to show it off. And so starting the company was totally a no-brainer. It was something that really made a lot of sense, and over the years, all of the family have worked in the company. And today, Fehr-Way Tours is owned and run by my wife, Diane Fehr Palmer, and she's the youngest of John's daughters. We do use deluxe motor coaches, and there again we've got a family tie because Beaver Bus Lines was in the family and still is. Diane's brother, John Jr., is the one who runs the bus line now, and they have the latest of coaches and keep them in very good repair. They provide us with the transportation that we need for trips out of Winnipeg, and also with professional drivers that are going to add to your tour as well. The tours, we've had 41 years to work at it, so we've had the chance to try and balance things so that you are able to see the different sites in the areas, but also that you have time to go explore for things that you basically are making your own memories about. But the trips after 41 years, each year people coming back have been questioned as to how their trip was, what they liked, and what they would do different or what they would like to see different, and that's resulted in the balanced itinerary that we have today. You've got 41 years of fine-tuning if you go on our trip to the Maritimes this fall. Professional tour directors and drivers, as I mentioned, we get professional drivers from Beaver Bus Lines, and they give us the ones that we look for. We always ask for a driver who not only is experienced and a professional driver, but one that fits our scenario of customer number one. And so we've got tour directors as well. They not only know how to count people and make sure that everybody's there, but they actually enjoy people and enjoy what they're doing, providing you with a good holiday. The comprehensive pre-planned tours, as I mentioned, the sightseeing and attractions are included in the price of your tour, so that you are paying in the first place for the tour. You'll pay in Canadian dollars at the beginning. It takes care of your transportation. It takes care of your attractions that you'll see. It takes care of your accommodation each night. It takes care of baggage handling. So when you get on the bus the first day, you give your suitcase over to the driver. He stows it under the bus, and then as we stop in a different location, it'll be turned over to the hotel staff to deliver right to your room. You don't have to handle it. And when you leave any of the locations, the hotel staff picks the bag up and brings it down to the bus driver, who checks it off and stows it under the bus again. And so it goes on through the tour till you get to the last day and you find out that you bought a lot of things and you've got a suitcase that's a little heavier to get up the stairs by yourself. So that's the only restraint that you've got on it as far as your suitcase is concerned. And I know I said in the first place, customer is number one, but we feel that you'll find us with great personal service, and folks that have traveled with Fehr-Way before are the ones that provide us with the best advertising that we have. And if you haven't been with us, we hope that you'll go with us this fall or this summer, and you'll turn into one of those advertisements. Now I'm going to turn over to Eric, and he's going to show us Alaska.
I'm just gonna put these back on temporarily. I'll get you to turn them off when we finish. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eric. I'm going to stand out in front here for a moment because we have some folks who are watching us at home on Facebook, all pretty science fiction to me, but they tell me it works well. So hello, everybody out there in Facebook world. So I'll say hello to you, and I'll step over here in just a moment. So anyway, thank you for coming out. I understand some folks drove in from Winkler, so you battled through the snowy roads, and we have another blast of winter on our hands. But as I said, that light is flickering out there somewhere. The light at the end of the tunnel is just about there for us. So we're going to take a look at our Fehr-Way tour through Yukon and Alaska. Anybody in the group here been through that part of the world? You haven't? You have. Fantastic. These folks have traveled with the Maritimes, they've come back for this presentation, so they must be doing okay. So, all I can tell you, it is an incredible part of the country. We had lunch last week with some friends who have traveled with us several times. Names are Al and Audrey. If you're watching Al and Audrey, I hope you don't mind me telling the story. Al and Audrey have traveled all over the world. They've been to countries I've never heard of. They are absolute world travelers. And at lunch last week, they had said of all of the trips they've taken, whether it be a coach tour or others, the Alaska tour, Yukon-Alaska tour they did with us a couple of years ago was the best trip they've ever taken, to the point where they said they'd love to do it again. So it is an incredible part of the country. It's a part of the country, a part of the world where you wouldn't normally go to. You're never passing through and there, so you make a deliberate attempt to go there. I will tell you, we keep you very busy on this trip, because likelihood is you'll go by this part of the world once in your lifetime. And so we keep you pretty busy, but you'll see some amazing things while we're traveling. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to show you some photos. Some of the photos you'll see here are photos that I've taken myself. I've done this trip many times, so I can talk to you. I can answer any questions you might have at the end of the presentation. Also at the end of the presentation, I have a short video that I've put together of photos that I have taken on this tour over the last couple of years. For the folks on Facebook, you will not be allowed to see that. I have to end it because there's some music in the background, and there's some copyright issues with that, so Facebook won't allow us to play it. But for the rest of the group here in the room, you'll be able to see that at the end. It's probably not long, but 6 or 7 minutes or so of photos that I've taken on these trips myself. So, Mill will turn on the lights. I'm going to step across. Hopefully I can see some notes that I've made for myself here, and hopefully those folks, if I'm yelling, folks, it's because those people who are watching on Facebook, sometimes they have a little bit of an issue with the sound. So if it's talking a bit too loud, that's the reason why. So we are going to take a trip. Actually, it's reversed. It's Yukon and then Alaska. It's 22 days. It's the longest trip that Fehr-Way does. For 22 days, we'll leave Winnipeg on June 5th. And we can make stops along the way. So we had folks who needed to be picked up in Saskatoon or in Edmonton. We can do it, and I've done that in the past. I've actually picked people up in Whitehorse, as far north as Whitehorse. They flew in from Toronto. A couple came in from Toronto. They met us in Whitehorse, and they left us in Whitehorse because we visit Whitehorse on the way up and on the way back. So we can do that as well. These are the fly-in options. I also had a gal, a lady I met a couple of years ago. She lives in England, and she was on a tour here doing something else, and she was intrigued by this. So the next year she booked, and she flew to Winnipeg and took the bus tour out of Winnipeg, but she left us in Calgary. She had more flight options back to England from Calgary, so she left us in Calgary. And when I spoke with her by phone, said there is the option to meet us in Edmonton. She said, "Are you kidding and miss the great Canadian prairies?" Never, she said. "I will take the bus out of Winnipeg, but I will fly home from Calgary." So that is an option for you as well. So this is the route we will follow. It's a long route. You'll cover a lot of territory on this tour. Obviously out of Winnipeg first, we'll make our way up to Saskatoon. That'll be our first night, our first day. We'll come up through Edmonton, Fort St. John, in northern British Columbia, Fort Nelson, which is a really interesting stop, and you'll see a photo of that later. Watson Lake, Yukon. Anybody know what Watson Lake, Yukon is probably best known for? You're going to see it in a couple of minutes. Know what Watson Lake, Yukon is known for. Very small little community. Okay, I won't tell you. I'll wait till we get there. We're going to travel into Whitehorse. We'll spend some time in Whitehorse. And then when we leave Whitehorse, we're going to travel along a highway called the Top of the World Highway. And if you choose to make this trip, you'll see why it's called the Top of the World. You'll spend almost the entire day climbing a mountain. It is an amazing scenery. You are so far, you're so high on this mountain that virtually nothing grows there. That's how high you are. And on that day is actually the day we cross into Alaska, a little place called Poker Creek, Alaska. It is the most northern border crossing in all of North America. Has a population of 3. 2 American customs officers and 1 Canadian. That's all who live there for. And they do a 30-day rotation in and out in 30 days. So we'll pass through there. We're going to spend a couple of nights in Dawson City, Yukon. Dawson City was the center of the Klondike Gold Rush back in the late 1890s. It is a National Historic Site, so most of the or all of the buildings that are in the town itself really can't be altered, can't be touched, because it is a National Historic Site. So to go into Dawson City is just an incredible trip back in history. It looks pretty much like it did in I always joked and said if Universal Studios came in here to shoot a movie, they could set their cameras up based in the late 1890s and probably not make any changes, just film the movie as it is. Still dirt roads, elevated wooden sidewalks. The only thing they took out was the hitching posts for your horses. Those have been removed. But we're going to spend 2 nights in Dawson City, and I will tell you, it is an amazing place to visit. We'll see some photos later of that. And from there, we make our way over to Fairbanks, Alaska. A very nice city. We'll spend a few days there. Then we're going to travel south to Anchorage. We have some great activities there. We're going to take a river cruise, or a boat cruise rather, on Prince William Sound and visit some of the glaciers that are there. And then we start making our way back. We'll stop in Tok, Alaska. We spend the night there, back down into Whitehorse, and then we make our way down to Dease Lake, which is in northern British Columbia, Smithers, BC, Prince George, down to Hinton, which is just outside of Jasper, and then we make our way home from there to Calgary, Regina, and back into Winnipeg. We'll cover all that territory in 22 days. Some pictures I shot over the last couple of years. Some happy travelers that we had with us. This picture here, you'll see some photos later of it, but this photo here is in a little place called Dawson Creek, not Dawson City, but Dawson Creek, which is in northern British Columbia, and that's where the Alaska Highway begins. We'll talk a little bit about the Alaska Highway. This picture here is shot high above on a mountaintop above Dawson City, Yukon. That's where those folks is a place we call the Midnight Dome, and the reason they call it that is a mountaintop. But on June 21st every year, the longest day of the year, they hold a big party up at the top of this mountain, and they call it the Midnight Dome. So we're going to travel up there and get some wonderful photo opportunities from up there. So some of the things, we'll go through these quickly because we have photos of them as we go through. When we get into Edmonton, which is on day 2, those who wish, we'll take you over to West Edmonton Mall. If there's anything you need to pick up. Milepost 0, which is Milepost 0 of the Alaska Highway, that is in Dawson, Dawson Creek, northern British Columbia. We're going to visit the Fort Nelson Historical Museum, lots of fun there. Liard Hot Springs, I'll tell you a little bit about that. We're going to spend some time there. Signpost Forest, that's what is in Watson Lake, Yukon. I asked you what's most famous about that, and I'll tell you about it when we get there. Dawson City, we have a tour guide will come over. Here's an interesting fact about our tour guide. Do we have, no? Do you know if John is our tour guide this year? Probably, he's been our tour guide. John, he's a tour guide in Dawson City. John is from England, lives full-time in Reno, Nevada, and is the local tour guide in Dawson City, Yukon. Now you try and put all that together. Well, John and his wife, he's an engineer by training. John and his wife have a beautiful RV, and 25 years ago, they took their first trip to the Yukon Territory. And as many do, they absolutely fell in love with the Yukon Territory. So for the past 25 years, John and his wife have spent every summer from May through to September in Dawson Creek, in Dawson City, Yukon. And he was very much involved in the community while he was there and did as much learning as he could. And because he became so knowledgeable, the local tourist industry asked him if he'd become the local tour guide. England, Reno, Nevada, summertimes in Dawson City. So John will come on board and he'll give us a great tour of these. It's a full day. We'll spend the whole day together. We're going to do some panning for gold. We're going to go to Claim 33 and we're going to do some panning for gold. We're going to go to North Pole. North Pole is the name actually of the town. It's in Alaska, and it's interesting. It was named that because a business enterprise went in and literally bought the town, and they changed the name of it to North Pole. Their idea was they're going to open toy factories that would produce toys that were made in North Pole. That never really panned out for that manufacturer, but the town is still called North Pole, and they have a massive Christmas store there that you will visit. When we're in Fairbanks, Alaska, we're going to do a riverboat discovery cruise. You'll see a photo of that later. An amazing day. We're going to visit the Palace Theater. You're going to see, I'm going to guess, sorry, talk louder. Oh my, okay. I better move over this way. Okay, we'll try and do it from this side here for the folks on Facebook. They're having trouble hearing apparently. Where we're at in Fairbanks, we're going to visit the Palace Theater. And I'm going to tell you that you will probably see the funniest live theater you have ever seen. I've seen it many times, and I'm in side-splitting laughter every time I see it. We'll spend an evening there. You'll see hopefully you'll see Mount McKinley if the weather cooperates. We're going to visit the Iditarod sled, their headquarters, which is in Alaska. We're going to take a cruise, a glacier cruise on Prince William Sound. And in the video at the end, you'll see a couple of photos that I took on that. Just outside of Palmer, Alaska, we're going to visit a muskox farm. There'll be a guided tour. Will take us through there. We're going to take the White Pass and Yukon Railway. And by this time, we've left Alaska. We're actually going to be in Whitehorse. We will have left Alaska, but we're going to board a rebuilt vintage train, beautiful train. We're going to board the White Pass Yukon Railway, and it's going to take us back into Alaska. We're going to go to Skagway, Alaska. We're going to spend the afternoon in Skagway and then head back to Whitehorse after that. We're going to have stops in Jasper and Banff, Lake Louise, Columbia Icefields Parkway will stop there as well. You can see the meals that are included. Breakfast, lunch at Muncho Lake. You'll see that in the slides in a little bit. We have a picnic lunch, beautiful little park on the side of the road with a brook going through. We'll stop there. We'll have lunch on board the boat that we take the glacier cruise on in Prince William Sound. They serve us lunch on that. This lunch has been added that you see at the bottom right here, lunch at Bell 2 Lodge. We lobbied to have that included. It's a day where there's in the north, traveling north is very different anywhere else you travel. You could have many, many miles between restaurants and hotels and so on. So you kind of take what's available to you. Bell 2 Lodge is a gorgeous lodge, but lunch was pricey. So we did some lobbying and we've been successful. So that's now included in the trip. You'll have a wonderful lunch at Bell 2 Lodge. You'll have a welcome dinner on day 3. When we're in Fairbanks, we're going to have a salmon bake. Any salmon fans on board? Because on this trip, you will have an opportunity to have salmon every day if you choose. Salmon is a huge industry in Alaska. So once you get to Alaska, you'll have the opportunity to do that every day. And then we'll have a Fehr-Way final dinner on our way back as well. So that's kind of real quick. By the way, I didn't introduce my better 3/4 is at the back here, my wife Karen. She travels with me lots as well, so she's with me today. She's the brains of the outfit, so she keeps us going. Okay, so some of the photos here. Dawson Creek, British Columbia. Where we're standing, they say, mile 0, and so that technically is not mile 0. It is in the town. The actual mile zero is a short walk from where we're staying. This is a visitor center we go to, and most will walk down and get a photo at milepost zero. And this is where the highway began. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Alaska Highway. I won't dwell on it too long. This is actually it here. Sorry, this is the milepost zero right here, and it's a short walk from the visitor center that you see there. So the Alaska Highway, it was constructed during World War II to connect the contiguous United States and Alaska and Canada. And what the problem was, the Japanese had, yeah, Karen's telling me I can't yell much louder than that, Karen. Bill, there's no way of turning that volume up, eh? Okay. The Japanese had become involved in the Second World War. They attacked Pearl Harbor. There was now a theater of war in the Pacific. The Americans were very concerned that the Japanese would attack Alaska through the Aleutian Islands. So they put a plan in place to build the Alaska Highway, which would give them the ability to rush military personnel and equipment and supplies into Alaska very quickly. It begins in Dawson Creek, which is in northern British Columbia, and it runs to Delta Junction, which is in Alaska. When it was completed in 1942, it's about 2,700 kilometers in length, but today it's just over 2,200 kilometers in length, and this is due to continuing reconstruction of the highway, which has rerouted and straightened many of the sections out, so it's actually shrunk over the years. It has an informal system of historic mileposts. So if you have an establishment on the Alaska Highway, it's not a typical address that we would think, 1453 such and such. You're actually at mileposts. So they start at Dawson Creek and make their way up the highway. So if the house that you have or the restaurant that you have is 524 kilometers from Dawson Creek, that's your address. You are at milepost 524. So that's how they do addresses along the Alaska Highway. And those posts you'll see in the ground as you travel. Delta Junction, Alaska is the end of the highway at historic milepost 1422. At this point, the Alaska Highway meets with the Richardson Highway, which continues another 155 kilometers into the city of Fairbanks, Alaska. Since much of the route would pass through Canada, support from the Canadian government was crucial to build this highway. However, the Canadian government perceived no value in putting up the required funds to build the road, this is back in the 1940s, 1942, to build the road, since the only part of Canada that would benefit was not more than a few thousand people in the Yukon Territory. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, and beginning of the Pacific Theater in World War II, coupled with Japanese threats to the west coast of North America and the Aleutian Islands, changed the priorities for both countries. And in February 1942, the construction of the Alaska Highway began, and Canada agreed, this was interesting, Canada agreed to allow construction as long as the United States bore full cost of it, and that the road and other facilities that were constructed along the way in Canada would be turned over to the Canadian authorities after the war. And that actually did occur on April 6, 1946. The Canadian portion was turned over to Canada. And on September 24th, 1942, crews from both directions met at mile 588 at what became named Contact Creek at the British Columbia-Yukon border. You'll actually see that. There's a marker there. You'll see where the two highway construction crews coming from either direction met. And the entire route was completed on October 28th, 1942. An incredible feat. In less than a year, they constructed. To call it a highway is not what we would call a highway today. It was trees knocked down and gravel put over them and that type of thing, but it gave the ability to get into Alaska very quickly. We're going to visit Fort Nelson. Fort Nelson has a wonderful heritage museum. We have a great day there. It's a really great afternoon. And right across the highway from here is the Fort Nelson Visitor Center. So we'll spend a bit of time here, and then we'll go across to the Visitor Center, and the employees there put on a slide presentation for us, and it's really wonderful. This gentleman down here, wonderful man named Bob, my friend Bob. Bob and his wonderful, beautiful wife Eleanor has traveled with us many times, and they did this trip back in, I'm not sure if you're watching Eleanor or not, but hello. And they made this trip back a couple of years ago, and unfortunately we lost Bob this past spring. He passed away, but wonderful, wonderful gentleman. So wildlife. I've taken all of these pictures with the exception of this one. The grizzly that you see at the top left, the black bear here. This brown bear that you see in the bottom left, she actually had a third cub that's not in the photograph, was trailing behind. And they made their way across the highway and into the bush, and away they went. They were gone. But you'll see a lot of wildlife. Bears, moose, you generally see a lot of bears on this trip. Again, you never guarantee where or when, but we generally see a lot of wildlife on this tour. That grizzly bear is an amazing guy up. And yes, he's real. If you're wondering if he's a stuffed grizzly bear, he is not. He is very real. We're going to stop. Anybody recognize the two folks in the middle? Do you recognize them at all? There's a TV show. It ended, I think, in 2019 on Discovery Channel called Jade Fever. Are you familiar with that show? It's it's a Discovery Channel show, and it's shot in Jade City, British Columbia, which is in the Cassiar Mountains. So we stop at their store. Claudia and Robin are the owners of it. Claudia is by far the boss of this operation, and we go and you meet Claudia, you'll understand what I mean. She runs this show, and we'll stop for some time, and they welcome us in their store, a wonderful location there. They give us demonstrations on how you mine jade, how you cut jade, and they have coffee on for us as well. Just some beautiful scenery as we travel along. And again, in the video at the end, you'll see some other photos that I've included that I've taken myself. Yeah, this place here, Muncho Lake. We're going to stop at a place called Northern Rockies Lodge. Marianne is the owner of this restaurant. She will put on a tremendous German meal for us. At lunchtime we're there. Does a fantastic job. The lake itself is right behind the lodge that you see here. Beautiful, beautiful place. They run their own. They have cabins that you can fly out into for fishing and so on. So they have their own airplanes there, and they're bright yellow in color, and they're sitting on the blue water out behind the. It's an absolutely beautiful spot. But Marianne and her staff will prepare a beautiful, very tasty meal. And that picture is just on the front step of the lodge itself, and this is the dining room that you see here on the right-hand side. And it's me over there, and our driver, Blair Didichuk. We're going to visit Liard Hot Springs. It's in Liard Hot Springs Provincial Park, which also is British Columbia, and is home to the largest natural hot springs in all of Canada. It is a natural river that flows hot water rather than what you normally would see, which is a spring-fed man-made lake. This river itself is heated. It's absolutely beautiful. There's change rooms there that you can use as well. It's excuse me, I have a little tickle in my throat, so forgive me if I cough on you. From the parking lot, probably a 10-minute walk. Very easy walk, all on an elevated boardwalk, a wooden structured boardwalk, straight down to the hot springs itself. So a very easy walk to get there. So we'll visit there as well on our way up. These guys just on the side of the highway. Actually, they were in the middle of the highway when we arrived, and you don't argue with somebody something that size, and eventually they moved and let us make our way along. So I talked about Watson Lake. Watson Lake, Yukon is a very small little community, and during the construction of the Alaska Highway, which goes right through Watson Lake was set up by the American military as a medical facility for workers on the highway who became injured or sick. They'd be returned, they'd be brought back to Watson Lake until they were better, and then they'd go back out on the job site. So travelers from around the world have been bringing signposts from their hometowns to the signpost forest since 1942. And the tradition began during construction, as I say, of the Alaska Highway, when U.S. Army Private Carl Lindley, he spent time in Watson Lake. He was injured. He was recovering from an injury, and so he was sent back here in order to recuperate. And a commanding officer asked him to repair and erect the directional signposts. And while completing the job, he added a sign that included the direction and mileage to his hometown of Danville, Illinois. Others followed suit, and the trend caught on. And by 1990, a couple from Ohio added the 10,000th sign to the signpost. Today, there are over 80,000 signs in the Watson Lake signpost forest. And I have 5 of them, I think, up there right now myself. So it's me putting one up. And there's another one for another year there, another one over here. And I take along a cordless drill and kind of snoop out a spot where we can put them up. And these are, and you're welcome to take your own signs, and that's what some of these are. All of these signs came with us here. Some folks brought these signs. There's a few here as well who came along with us, some over here. So you're welcome to take your own sign. We'll put that up for you as well in the signpost forest. Then, this sign picture actually should be we passed this sign just before we get into Watson Lake. And we'll stop and give you an opportunity to take a photo at the Yukon. Welcome to the Yukon sign. We stop at a little place called the Braeburn Lodge, which is literally in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing there. It's nothing on 100 miles on either end of it. And we'll stop and have a morning stop. And that cinnamon bun feeds 4 people. So I always tell everybody, if you're going to match up with 3 other people because they're massive. So we're going to stop and we'll have a cinnamon bun at the Braeburn Lodge. How many remember back in school days, the poetry by Robert Service? Remember those? The Cremation of Sam McGee? Yeah. When we're in Dawson City, Robert Service's home is still there. It's a little log cabin. It's still there. And a number of us will take the opportunity to go over and visit. And what they've done is great. It's run by Parks Canada. And Parks Canada have a young man who is an absolutely striking image of Robert Service. And he does a recital. They have a little amphitheater set up just to the left of the cabin. And he'll recite. He does a couple of Robert Service's poems. And he does a fabulous job on that. And he'll tell you the whole story about Robert. Robert Service became very wealthy as a result. He was a banker. He worked for Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce in Dawson City. He became running poetry, became quite wealthy actually, moved to New York City, and he'll tell you the whole story about Robert Service. We stopped for a picnic lunch along the way, which is fantastic. This is a little park. There's a brook that runs through here, and I've never had a bad day there. The weather's always been fantastic each time I've been there, so we'll do that as well along the way up. And then we make our way into Dawson City, Yukon. And where these folks are standing, I talked about the Midnight Dome, the mountain. Well, that's what they're standing on up here, is the Midnight Dome, and they're looking down on the town of Dawson City. And that's the Yukon River that you see, which flows right past Dawson City. You'll actually cross that when you leave Dawson City on your way then up into Alaska. You'll actually cross the Dawson Yukon River on a ferry. And you'll see the ferry actually on the slideshow at the end of this presentation. But it is an incredible place to visit. Anybody ever watched any of the TV I don't know if it's Discovery Channel or History? They do the gold mining, Yukon Gold and so on Discovery. A lot of them are shot in this area, and the hotel we stay in is, you'll see, I don't watch the shows myself, but the driver that we use, Blair, he does. So he recognizes all these characters. So we're having breakfast in the morning, and he'll point all these guys out to me, or in these TV shows, these gold mining TV shows on Discovery or on History Channel. We're going to visit Claim 33, and everybody will get an opportunity to pan for gold. Everybody will find gold. You will all have a little bit of gold before you leave there that day. And that's a fun day. We have a lot of fun doing that. Now, this is the top of the World Highway that I talked about. The length at the top of the World Highway is 281 kilometers, and it connects Dawson City to Tok, Alaska. That's the length of the top of the World Highway. And this is where we will enter Alaska, at Poker Creek, Alaska. Very, very remote area. As I say, 3 people live there year-round. Once we pass into Alaska, the first community we'll visit, a little place called Chicken, Alaska. A frontier town. That would even be giving it some credit. Has no electricity, has no running water. They have generators to produce, they have a bakery there so they can run their ovens. They have a generator. And the washroom facilities is a very clean, very well kept outhouse facility. And it's called, Karen, it's not the chicken coop, it's the chicken poop, they call it, because the name of the town is Chicken, Alaska. So we'll visit there. That's where we do a coffee stop, and it's really quite an interesting place. And then we'll continue on with our day, finish with the top of the World Highway, and we'll find ourselves in Fairbanks, Alaska that day. There's Chicken there. Chicken, Alaska. Yeah. Wonderful spot. Lots of fun. We have a lot of fun there, actually. And this is at a place called Delta Junction, Alaska. So this is where the highway, the Alaska Highway itself, officially ends, is in Delta Junction. They have a visitor center there. There's a gift store everywhere you go. If you're looking for gift shops, you'll have no shortage of gift shops, and they have one here as well. As I said, North Pole Santa Claus House, we'll visit there. Every time I've gone in there, I wonder what it would be like as an employee to hear Christmas carols 12 months. I love Christmas carols, but 12 months of the year they're playing them over the speakers. So we'll spend a little time. One thing they have here, by the way, which is so great, I've done it each year. It costs $10, and you can go. They have a counter set up in there, and you can pay to have your grandkids, anybody in your life. They will send a letter from Santa. Will send them a letter, sends them some stickers and some other things as well. But he'll actually address the letter. In our case, we have 2 granddaughters, and they actually address the letter. It's from Santa, but he addresses it to our 2 granddaughters. And they'll do that here for you, and it costs you $10 to do it. And so I've done it several times. Every time I do it, I thought, yeah, pay my $10. We do this in June. By the time December comes around, every year it's come, and it always comes before Christmas. They've never failed. So it's a bit of an opportunity while you're there. We're going to be in Fairbanks, Alaska. Fairbanks is a great city, and one of the things we're going to do there is we're going to take a sternwheeler discovery trip, like a paddle wheel down the river. But the biggest part of that city, we have another picture? Yeah, I'll just come back to that in a second. So that's the steam wheeler itself that we'll take out of Fairbanks, and it's terrific. It's really, really a nice trip. But one of the things that we'll do on that trip is we're going to visit an Athabascan Indian village. And what you do is the sternwheeler comes along the riverbank and actually will stops there. And we enter into conversations then. The captain of the ship has a mouthpiece on, and a person on the shore has a mouthpiece on, and we can hear her and the captain through the loudspeakers on the ship. And they'll stop at one, for instance, a young a gal, she's a university, there's all university students, but all Native Americans who work here. And she's going to clean a salmon for us. So she has the table, and she'll go through the whole cleaning process of how to clean a salmon. We'll go to another one, and they'll show us how they deal with the sled dogs and how that's done in the training. And they stop the boat each time and the sound on board is crystal clear. And sometimes you're on these tours and the speakers are muffly, and so that is not the case here at all. And they'll stop. So then they do that along the shore, and then we'll actually stop, and we'll get off the boat, and we'll walk through the Athabascan Indian village. And in 4 different locations, they have people then who talk to us. This is about fur trading and so on, but there's a total of 4 stops that we walk around this Indian village, and they have bleachers that we sit on and have presentations made to us, and we board the boat and we head back out again. It's an absolutely fantastic day that we spend there. We're going to spend an evening at Alaska Land. And Alaska Land, the big hit for most is we have a salmon bake, an outdoor salmon bake. Huge salmon steaks done over an open fire, and it's a huge buffet, and that's included in your trip, by the way. Huge buffet and desserts and drinks and all kinds of other things that are available to us. So we'll spend some time there. There's also within the grounds itself, if you're into old vintage mining machinery and so on, there's lots of that to see on the grounds as well. And then after we've finished all of that is when we go to that Palace Theater that I told you. It's on the grounds, and you'll see probably the funniest live production you've ever seen. It's absolutely hilarious, and it's all about life in Alaska. What on earth are we doing in Alaska? That kind of a thing, and they're absolutely hilarious. All local actors, and so you'll spend some time there in Alaska, and that's in Fairbanks. There you go, that's the salmon bake there. So there's a fire down underneath here in this metal box that they have, and the salmon steaks you can see here. So they just take that whole rack and they just flip it over. They just keep flipping it over, and this is the end result. Karen, how's the salmon at Alaska Land?
Most amazing.
Karen is an absolute lover of salmon, so she has it every day that we're there. She loves this salmon. Here's the George Parks Highway. We're going to be traveling along. As you see there, we'll pass by Denali National Park as we travel.
Do you actually excuse me, do you actually see that?
See Denali. I'm asked, the question is for the folks who can hear me on Facebook, I'm asked if we'll actually see Denali itself, which is the mountain. First of all, we won't, because you have to, it's a full day's trip to get into the park to where it is to see it. And even if you do, and you can do that, but it's a park service that takes you there. Your private coaches and cars can't go in. They put you on what looks like school buses that take you, but it's a full day's journey to do that. And statistics say 80% of the people who visit Alaska never see Denali because it's under so much cloud and fog most of the time. So 80% of the people never actually see. But no, we don't get. There is one spot that we will stop at a memorial, military memorial site. There are two mountains, and right between it is where Denali is, and they have the the spyglass kind of thing that you look through, and you can do that to see it from quite a distance. But no, we're not up close to Denali at all. It's a full day's journey in, and the National Park Service would take you there. We're going to stop and visit the Alaska Veterans Memorial. One thing the U.S. does well is honor their service people and their veterans. So we're going to stop here for a brief time, and they have, as you can see, these are very large concrete pieces here to every branch of the service, whether it be the Marine Corps or Navy, Air Force, Army. They have that display set up. It's a beautiful spot. We're going to visit the Iditarod Sled headquarters in Wasilla, Alaska. And if you like, they'll take you, this is in summertime, that's a wagon on wheels, and they'll take you for a short run on with the dogs, and they allow us access to the puppies if you wish to hold a puppy. And these are puppies that will be have been bred for dog sled racing, and they live at this center, and this is where the training takes place. So it's really wonderful. When we're in Anchorage, Alaska for a day, where this is actually, if you've traveled with us in the past, you'll know that on longer tours, our driver must have a day off. That's legislation. They can only drive X number of days in a row. So this is the day that our driver has a day off. So we hire a local company, just like ourselves, to provide us with a very similar coach and a driver, and they'll take us out for the day. So we're going to go drive out to Prince William Sound, and we're going to board a boat, and we're going to get up really close, much closer than this photograph here, really close to a large number of glaciers in Prince William Sound. It's absolutely beautiful, and lunch is served on the boat, and it's included. So what he'll do, what the captain will do, we're all inside, it's all glassed, so you're warm, it's toasty warm, and then he'll come up to a glacier, and then they open the doors, and we're welcome to go out on the deck to take photographs and do whatever we wish to do, and then when it travels very quickly, so when we're ready to go, he will call us back inside, and off we go. But again, you'll see some photos at the end here on my slideshow of some of the sea life that we see when we're in Prince William Sound. So this is on board the boat. I took this photograph down here, and the captain is up higher elevation than us, of course, and he's telling us, look at 11 o'clock, look at 5 o'clock, and you're spinning, and you're not seeing anything in terms of whales. So at this point, he said, whatever direction it was at 11 o'clock, and I just picked my camera up. I wasn't looking through it. I just spun around and just kept hitting the button. And at the end of the day, didn't know what I had. At the end of the day, I realized I had a picture of the tail of the whale as it was headed back down again. Wonderful crew. We have a fantastic crew. So the crew will come out on the deck of the boat, and they have nets, looks like a butterfly net, on a very long pole. So they reach down in the water, and they pull some of these chunks of ice, and they use that ice in the bar. They put that ice in your drinks. If you ordered a drink, they'll put that ice in your drink. So there's a few folks that I had a couple of years ago. That's our driver, Blair. Blair gets the day off, and what do you think Blair does? He comes with us wherever we're traveling. He travels with us anyway. But he came and took the day with us. This young gal here, she was really a wonderful young lady. Most of our travelers are our demographic, our age. She's a young university student attending University of Ottawa. And her grandmother was on this tour, so she flew to Winnipeg, and she and her grandma took the 22-day trip together. So it was wonderful for both of them. Yeah, she was a wonderful young lady living in Ottawa. When we leave Anchorage, on our way out, we'll pass through, not very far out of Anchorage, we'll pass through a place called Palmer, Alaska, and we'll stop and walk and do a tour. There's a guy, that's our tour there. I took this photo, I'm kind of trailing behind. These folks that you see right here, they're from Ottawa. They flew out to Winnipeg and joined us, and flew back to Ottawa after the trip. That's our driver, Blair, that you see there. So we'll walk through, we have a guided tour. This muskox farm isn't a farm like you would think of a cattle farm where the animals are slaughtered for meat or whatever. They're not. This is an educational farm. It's a tremendous place. They give you an awful lot of education, and they'll use the hair that muskox shed, and they make mitts, and it's incredible stuff. They sell them in their gift shop. They're absolutely incredible products they make from it, but it's an educational center. It's not a traditional farm like a cattle farm or where they slaughter animals for meat. This is the White Pass Yukon Railway I talked to you about. Again, you'll see a short video at the end of the video. I'll show you. I have a little bit of a video of us on that train. And we take a pretty full day. We take the bus from Whitehorse. We go out to meet the train where it is, and then they take us back into Alaska. We've left Alaska at this point. They take us back in, and we'll spend a little bit of time in Skagway. If you've ever done any Alaska cruise at all, Skagway is a port. The gentleman back there said Skagway is one of the ports you go into. So typically when we're there are 2 or 3 large cruise ships in town when we're there. But beautiful old rebuilt vintage railway that you see here. And we go through the backcountry, and it is absolutely splendid. The scenery is incredible. I can't even describe it to you. Well, you can get a kind of a sense. This is a photo that I took. Someone else leaning up, as you see here, leaning out ahead of me, taking a photo as well. And you're welcome to go out on the platform between the 2 cars, in order to take your photographs. You're welcome to do that. On our way back, of course, Mount Robson. I took this photograph again. Mount Robson is one of those mountains. Here's how they describe it to us. Mount Denali or Denali Mountain or Mount Robson. They are so large and so high that they actually create their own weather patterns. And I don't understand weather, but that's what they tell me. So again, 75 or 80% of people who stand where I stand never see Mount Robson and I've been there several times, and I've seen at times just the peak of that mountain. All the rest of it is under cloud or under fog. That was a spectacular day, and I got to see the entire mountain and to photograph it. And we'll stop there for you to do that. Mine Canyon, this is an absolutely beautiful place. This is a stop. You walk down a series of steps and ramps, takes you down all through the canyon, but they have it set up well. It's done in sections, 1, 2, and 3. If you think your mobility is a little bit limited, you would just go on the first section, and then there's a ramp that'll take you back up. If you're feeling good, you do the second and third, but there are ramps that take you back up each time. Where do you think they take you back up to? The gift shop. That's where the path will take you back to, is the gift shop. We're going to stop at beautiful Lake Louise. Absolutely gorgeous Lake Louise on our way back. We'll stop just for a stop. We have a bit of a stop, maybe have a sandwich or something there, so we'll stop for a quick stop there. We're going to stop in Banff. Love Banff. That's Banff Avenue. I love the town of Banff. So we'll stop there for our afternoon coffee stop. So here's what we have here. You see your price of $47.99 per person plus GST. Single supplement you'll see there as well. And if booked by March 6th, is that today? Tomorrow? By March 6th, there's a $50 per person discount as well for you. So, I'm sorry to say April? Under deposit by March 6th, it says there. But it's April? Okay, April. Good.
April 6th is the
final payment is April 6th, yeah, and it's 60 days before departure. So, are there any, Karen, were there any questions on Facebook that I need to try to answer? Nothing there? Any questions at all about this trip, about Yukon and Alaska? Anything at all? Everybody's good?
How is the traffic into Malin?
I'm sorry?
How is the traffic into Malin Canyon?
Yeah, I'm asked how the traffic into Malin Canyon here is. There's a large parking area. We've had no trouble with that at all. And you're talking about foot traffic as you're going down through
just the traffic to get in.
No worries at all. We have no difficulty with that at all. No. And the bus, there's generally in these areas, these tourist areas, they have designated parking areas for the large coaches, so we're not competing for parking spaces and so on. Yeah, but no issues there at all.
I read someplace or heard something that they are limiting the amount of vehicles going down that road and back.
Okay. One of our guests here, for folks who are listening online, one of the folks have read something that they're at the Malin Canyon, which we saw near the end there, that there may be some limit to coaches and vehicles going into the park. We've never had that issue, and they'd be hesitant, I think, to do that because of the tourist dollars that are related to that. I think they'd be hesitant to put a whole lot of limits on us. We've never had an issue in it. We've gone in every year that I've been there. No issue at all.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions back here? No? Okay. Any other questions at all?
What
Yes.
day on the way down do you leave Edmonton?
We leave, Edmonton is the question for folks online is, what day do we leave Edmonton? The date we leave Winnipeg was whatever it was, June 5th, I think it was. So June 5th would be in, June 7th, was that the?
That's when you leave Edmonton.
Leave Edmonton 7th. We leave Winnipeg on the 5th. We stay in Saskatoon on the night of the 6th. And the night of the 7th, we'll be staying in Edmonton.
And what day are you back? In Edmonton?
We're not back in Edmonton. We don't return to Edmonton.
You have to fly.
We come, we don't fly, we don't travel
Okay.
through Edmonton on the way back. Sorry.
Okay.
You come into Calgary, and from Calgary, you'll take a shuttle up to Edmonton
And what day
the
is that?
next day.
22 days from the 5th would be the 27th.
Yes.
We can get you those dates. We can get that for you. Yeah. Any other questions there? Okay, so folks out in, sorry, Bill? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
up. Folks out in Facebook world, I have to say goodbye because the video we're going to see now, we're not permitted to show it because of some copyright issues with the music. So, thank you for joining us. Any questions, please call the office. Okay.